Hello and welcome to today's spotlight about a truly massive review that finds value in social and emotional learning. Again, we are thrilled to have you all here today with us. Before we start, we have some ground rules. We are recording this session, so if you don't feel comfortable with having your camera turned on, you're free to turn it off. We would also like to ask participants to introduce themselves in the chat and tell us who you are and where you're from. I am Caro, I am from Buenos Aires, Argentina. Please mute yourself when you're not speaking and feel free to use the reaction buttons to respond during the session. We love to see our participants actively engaged. Today, we are honored to have Mark Sparvell and Kim Norman Dobrin. Mark Sparvell is a global award-winning educator and leader with over 30 years experience. He's a busy keynote speaker, podcast host, and influencer, and he's been recognized as a thought leader in social emotional learning. Mark is the founder of the Cell in Edu community, which reaches 30,000 members and consults and advises several global organizations. Lastly, he's a director at Microsoft Education. Kim is the CEO and co-founder of the Free the Mind Co., a global award-winning organization that supports students, educators, and family in building social skills for well-being needed to navigate life with curiosity, resiliency, and joy. Across 30 years, Kim has been recognized with multiple awards for her trailblazing social entrepreneurship. She's a thought leader and in-demand speaker on topics of human rights and social intelligence, has published a number of best-selling books in South Africa, including Raising Wisdom. Now, let's give a warm welcome to them as they take us on an immersive journey into the importance of creating a well-being environment for all. Over to you guys.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for that, Cara. Let me just take a moment to get my screen ready. And Caro, if you could give me a thumbs up, then I'll know that that beautiful slide is perfect. Thank you. Good morning, everybody. Well, it's good evening here in Australia, 11:30 p.m. Thank you for your comments in the text chat. Keep them coming if you're just joining us. Let us know where you're from, what your role is. We'd love to hear from you. Lots of chatter in there. What I'm going to be talking about with Kim today is this curious title topic on this massive review. This is a meta-analysis which was undertaken exploring what is the value of social and emotional learning. And social and emotional learning is the process by which young people develop certain qualities, capabilities, and skills that allow them to navigate both their own emotional life and the life around them, their social life. This is what social and emotional learning is. We know that there is over 30 years of research around the space of positive psychology, which tells us that social and emotional learning has a significant impact, has an impact on the way that young people navigate their lives. It impacts their academic success, their wellness, and also their future readiness. So we know that social and emotional learning makes a large difference. But the question is always around not just why, but how do we do it? So how do we help young people develop these skills, particularly without giving additional burden to already stressed out teachers? So Caro's introduced me, but a quick summary. I'm Mark Sparvell. I'll be one of the speakers tonight, sharing the stage with Kim, who will introduce herself in just a moment. My day job is as a director of education in Microsoft. I've got a vested interest in this topic as an educator of over 30 years, as a teacher, as a principal, as a person working in higher education. But you know what? More importantly, I've got 2 grandchildren, aged 1 and 3. And I've got a vested interest in helping to create the world which these 2 beautiful young girls will live in the future. So you're going to find out from me about what is the hard evidence that turns an approach to social and emotional learning from just telling to compelling. Kim, would you like to introduce yourself?
Absolutely. So I'm super excited to be on here with you all today. My name is Kim Norman Dobrin. I am originally from South Africa, been living in America in Atlanta for 8 years. And mine is 33 years in education and human rights. Came from a background and a childhood with a lot of trauma, and realized very early on, before even my career started happening, was that in order to have success in any way, it was all about having these soft skills. Every job has got a start and a finish, and yet it's so important to learn how to live life daily and navigate both challenges and celebrations. So I have made a commitment for many, many years in order to move forward with this. Thank you, Mark.
Thanks so much for that, Kim. And you'll hear a lot from Kim later on in the session. Here's how the flow is going to go. And we'd love to read your comments in the text chat. If you like what you hear, you've got a question that you'd like to ask, you've got a resource that you'd like to share, this is our collective space. So the invitation is here for you to share in that text chat to benefit everyone. We're going to do a little bit of an emotion check-in. I'm going to walk through some of the latest evidence around why social and emotional learning. Then we're going to pass over to Kim, who's going to introduce Free the Mind, and particularly this approach in using literature as a vehicle for delivering social and emotional learning. Plenty of time for Q&A at the end, and then a wrap up. So that's our show flow, if you like. An important moment that we'll take now, you'll need to be answering a question in the text chat, is going to be, how are you feeling at the moment? And what we're going to use for this is the Chihuahua scale. So if you could take a moment while I'm talking to identify how Chihuahua you're feeling by simply placing the number in the text chat. That's everybody. Pop a number in there. We'll see some numbers popping up in a moment around how Chihuahua you are today. Engaging in an emotion check-in is a simple activity that does a number of important things. Number one, it signals that we're taking a pause. In our busy meetings, in our busy remote classrooms, in our busy face-to-face classrooms, we're taking a moment to take a litmus paper test on the emotional energy in the classroom, high or low, pleasant or unpleasant. It also signals to everybody that there's a significance to that. And you know what? It changes. The word emotion literally means to be in motion. It comes from the same Latin root word moto, like you get from a motor car. It means to be in motion. And an emotion check-in done regularly will highlight to learners that their emotions are in a state of flux. They're not fixed. They're fluctuating all of the time as a result of external and internal pressures, but also as a result of the skills that they develop to allow them to recognize and to regulate. Thanks for popping those in the text chat. Hope you enjoyed your Chihuahua check-in. Obviously, it's a trick question because we never feel one emotion at a time. We're always feeling multiple emotions at once, and sometimes they're in conflict. You can feel excited and nervous. You can feel proud and guilty. You can feel love and you can feel grief simultaneously. Humans are complex emotional beings, and learning is a social process. Therefore, it is tied to emotions. What you're looking at the moment is the mood meter from Yale Center for Emotional Intelligence. Think about this when you hear from Kim at the top of the hour here. Young people learn roughly 5,000 new words per year, but only 10% of those 5,000 words are learnt through direct instruction, through language class at school. The other 90% come from exposure to the language of emotions. And if we have to be able to name it in order to tame it, it's critical that young people develop an emotional vocabulary that is rich and descriptive. That's the bedrock for emotional intelligence That's the foundation of developing social skills, being able to accurately recognize, understand, label, express in order to regulate. So this is just an example of mood meter as a way of using it to help with an emotion check-in to develop emotional vocabulary. So when we think about why social and emotional learning, which can be a challenge to explain to many people, not the people in this room, I'm sure at the moment you have an interest in this topic. You understand that it significantly affects all learning and life outcomes for students. But beyond that, when we think about why SEL, part of it is it's just really hard to work out how other people are feeling. We could look at this person and think they're very angry, when in fact, they're delighted. They've just kicked a goal. They couldn't be happier. Or we might look at this young woman and think she's incredibly upset. She's grieving. She's sad. She's miserable. She's unhappy, an unpleasant emotion. But she's not. She's overwhelmed with joy. She's at the Taylor Swift concert where she's managed to get tickets. She couldn't be happier. It's notoriously hard to identify emotions in others. That's why developing emotional intelligence, being exposed to the language of emotions, being exposed through literature to the stories of emotional lives lived out, matter to our young people. It helps them to become more like emotion scientists and less likely to be emotion judges. So when we think about why social and emotional learning, it's not just about helping students to navigate tough times. That's important. And it's not just about helping them to bounce back. It's not just about, reducing the trauma that they might experience when something unpleasant happens. Social and emotional learning will help that. It's like an inoculation. It's like a vaccine that we can give our young people, that when they're exposed to unpleasant situations, will help them to navigate them. But it's also the stuff on the left. An approach to social and emotional learning is an accelerator of excellence. It helps young people to achieve more, to be more creative, to be more likable, to be more civic-minded, to be more likely to participate and contribute positively and purposefully in their lives, their communities' lives, and even economic lives. So social and emotional learning approaches are just as much about maximizing potential as they are about minimizing the damage that might be encountered with tough times. When I think about social and emotional learning, I often talk about it in relation to executive functioning, because these are both cognitive functions which allow young people to experience success in life. Is the little video panel sitting over the top of the slide or not? No, okay,
it's all good.
It's sitting over the top of mine, but that's okay because I know this slide like the back of my hand. So if we look on the right at executive functioning, this is like the controller of the brain. It allows kids to get stuff done. Social and emotional learning, we can look at the colorful capabilities on the left. This allows us to navigate ourselves and others to actually engage in good work, responsible decision-making, and the two are interdependent. In order to be able to self-manage, you need to be able to monitor yourself. You need that executive functioning in order to engage in having positive relationships, developing and sustaining positive relationships. One of the capabilities that social and emotional learning allows, you have to be able to control emotions, control impulse. So these are two that need to be looked at together. And in a study that was undertaken with parents, when they talked about social and emotional learning by itself, there wasn't a huge amount of support by many parents. When they talked about and tested social and emotional learning and academic success, it suddenly shifted and everybody was very interested and supportive of social and emotional learning approaches. So whenever I talk about social and emotional learning, I always talk about it alongside executive functioning as a way of improving academic outcomes, but also life outcomes. And there's plenty of research around that. I used this slide at Bet UK, which was in January. And this is from a Microsoft-sponsored work trend index, which drew upon all of the jobs being advertised in LinkedIn. These are the hot top skill requirement needed for an AI-empowered future. Have a look at those and think back to those executive functions and those social and emotional learning capabilities on the previous slide. Apart from AI delegation, they are all executive functions and social and emotional learning skills. Look at that in the top 3. Emotional intelligence. You want to get a job, create a job, or keep a job in an AI-empowered future, you've got to develop emotional intelligence, cognitive flexibility, creative evaluation, intellectual curiosity. You've got to be able to identify bias, which means you need to have a sense of fairness and a sense of equity and a sense of justice. When I saw these results and created this slide and the presentation, I was really hopeful about what I saw as being these top skills for an AI-empowered future. Happy to share these with you, by the way. If you're interested, certainly drop a note in the chat. If you're seeing things that you like, you've got questions for Kim coming up, you've got questions for me, reach out. Consider this to be an invitation for a conversation. If we look to right now in a study undertaken around the new future-ready skills, here's what the findings are. This is from McKinsey & Company's global practice. When looking at what's going to change has changed in work between 2016, 2020, which has accelerated now with since COVID, a reduction in physical manual skills, a reduction in a requirement in the workplace for basic cognitive skills, like the ability to read and write. However, a jump in higher cognitive skills like analysis, hypothesis generation, ideation, a giant jump in a requirement for social and emotional skills, just like the ones we saw on the previous slide. And not surprisingly, a huge jump in the skills required for the digital economy. So these are the new future-ready skills. And right now, when HR professionals across the globe were asked what's missing, these were all related to social and emotional skills, the ability to have cognitive flexibility, to be creative, to be able to work with others, to be able to deal with uncertainty, ambiguity, complexity, to be able to communicate with many different people in the way that makes best sense to them, to be able to tune into them. Here's an interesting term I came across last week in another piece of research. It said that the #1 capability required to be successful in today's workplace was the ability to be comfortable with the informal, to be able to be comfortable with the informal, which means to be able to work with other people and read them, to understand the small cues, the small messages that they're communicating around how they're feeling and respond to those accordingly. Comfortable with the informal. Let's jump into the research piece, and then we'll pass the baton over to Kim, because she's going to pick up well, how do you do this if research says this? So these are my top favorite bits of research because they're published in journals and they're replicable and they're authoritative. This, again, like I said at the start, this turns telling about Sell to compelling people about Sell by providing them with evidence. So that's the important bit. This first one, and all of the links for these will be available in the show notes afterwards. I'll make sure you have access to these. A lot of these are around the importance of early years. So we're talking about sort of from kindergarten through to sort of elementary or primary school. It doesn't end there, but there's a significance about taking an intentional approach, particularly a literature-based approach in these year levels. This first study from the American Journal of Public Health looked at the relationship between kindergarten social competencies and future wellness. And it found a statistically significant association. If you're a research geek, you'll love anything that's statistically significant. And this one had a statistically significant relationship between the capabilities of very young students, kindergartners through to about age 6, and young adult outcomes. Where social and emotional learning was high, they saw a direct link with improved education outcomes, improved employability and salary, a reduction in criminal activity for those with a cell background, substance abuse and mental health. The impact of a social and emotional learning approach stretched through people's lives. There's this one. This one's a really important one, which I like. This is the research between teacher wellness and student well-being. There's plenty of evidence here. In fact, there's even a name for it. It's called the emotion contagion effect. We catch emotions from other people. Students catch it from us. Teachers catch it from their leaders. We communicate emotions and we catch emotions in very small ways. They're kind of almost unnoticeable. But this piece of research looked particularly at mindfulness as a strong strategy for trauma-informed practice. So educators who'd engaged in very intentional mindfulness activity consistently reported a significant decrease in emotional exhaustion and an increase in self-efficacy, which is their belief that they can make a difference. So when educators are involved in a social and emotional learning program, student outcomes and wellness increases. That's the emotion contagion effect. Be careful what you're passing on to your students. There's this one. And this is I love this word, psychobiological approach. Whew, there's a word. This is all about self-regulation as being critical for readiness for school and therefore in for life. So when young people, I think we've got someone's microphone open at the moment. I think when young people are able to manage stimulation and manage attention, so they're able to regulate, they're able to navigate school. They're more ready for learning. As an educator, no surprise, but it means that young people need opportunities to develop self-regulation. The only way you can develop self-regulation is to develop self-awareness. The only way to develop self-awareness is to build an emotional vocabulary and have opportunities to practice and get feedback, which is where what Kim will be talking about provides the solve for a part of that. So I'll be excited to hear from that. This was published in the annual review of psychology. So again, another very strong academic piece. This one is interesting. This is about digital games having an impact on social and emotional learning, but only if done right. And this comes from the Mahatma Gandhi Institute, Rethinking Learning. And how does digital help? It helps when young people are able to take perspectives of others. And this is also why literature works. Literature, if you like, is an empathy engine for young people because it allows for perspective taking, considering the world and situations through the lens of others. Games can also provide opportunities to develop persistence, especially when they're encountering challenge. There can be collaborative problem solving, an opportunity to take and express pride, frustration, or gratitude, because those unpleasant emotions matter. Remember, All emotions matter and serve a purpose, even the emotions that could be viewed as unpleasant. And games can allow young people to experience pride and frustration, anger and disappointment, elation and joy, and learn how to express those in productive ways with others. You could also learn around betrayal and fear in a safe environment where you're basically able to simulate those experiences. And for young people, the evidence shows gaming can allow them to explore identity and ways of being. So this one is on digital games. There was a great piece of research done by Pearson's in the UK, and they asked 5,000 teachers and head teachers, 7,000 teachers and head teachers, how are we doing with social and emotional learning? And a whopping 75% said, could be better. We should do better. And they called out resilience as being important, kindness, self-esteem, tolerance, awareness. The teachers said, if we could have more of that developed, we're all going to be better. Think about this. What is the purpose of school and education? I believe the purpose of school and education is to create and recreate the society that we want to live in. That's what social and emotional learning programs can help us do. Develop more resilient, kinder, develop self-esteem and tolerance and awareness. Imagine if that was the priority of every education system. But let's get to the big one. Let's talk about this title of this talk, which is A Truly Massive Review Finds Value in Cell. What is that massive review? What did it find? You're about to find out. Let's go back in time first of all, though, because it's connected to this. There was an amazing piece of research done, a meta-analysis by Joseph Durlak back in 2011. And it put Cell on the map, quite frankly, because for the first time, it connected social and emotional learning to academic improvement, noting an 11 percentile point increase for students who had engaged in Cell versus those who had not. So that was a big deal, and it lasted 3.5 years. That's pretty amazing. So that was a big deal in 2011. But guess what? He and his team, including some friends from Yale, went back to the books this year and undertook a fresh meta-analysis, a study of studies, last year, 2023. It involved over 500,000 students and 424 separate studies. And on the screen this is what they found. Again, it's deja vu. Improved academic achievement, school climate more positive, functioning of the school better, social and emotional attitudes and skills, and pro-social civic behaviors. That's contribution, volunteering, random acts of kindness were all enhanced with a social and emotional learning approach. And an intriguing part was that this was a powerful driver of better culture and student outcomes all the way through middle, high school. There's no cutoff point. Social and emotional learning isn't the warm fuzzy for elementary and primary school. This is foundational, not ornamental for our work in schools, particularly if we're interested in driving student outcomes and creating flourishing learning environments. So humans are hardwired, to run simulations. And, I've talked about the importance of developing emotional vocabulary as being foundational for developing social and emotional skills. You can see on the screen here the capabilities outlined by Castle: self-awareness, responsible decision-making, the ability to develop and sustain positive relationships, the ability to be aware of social settings and think about that becoming confident with the informal, that social awareness, and the ability to self-manage. These are all the indicators of someone who has developed social and emotional skills and through the process of a social and emotional learning. But how do you do that? And when it's done well, there's a number of factors, including opportunity to practice, opportunity to get feedback, opportunity to observe, opportunity to develop an emotional vocabulary, opportunity to understand how the brain works, and of course, social learning opportunities, because learning is a social process. It's something best done together. And probably one of the best ways is through literature. And I'd like to pass over to my good friend who I'm delighted to be speaking with, Kim, to talk us through the program that she and her team have developed, which I think is a unique and exciting approach to developing social and emotional learning skills. Kim, over to you.
Thank you so much, Mark. I can listen to you forever. You're always so informative and so easy to listen to. Thank you so much, everyone. So Free the Mind Co., the name came out of when you free your mind, you open to opportunity and possibility. And we know how much fear and anxiety specifically stops potential and stops opportunity. So the very first storybook is written by Brent Feinberg. And he realized that fear and anxiety goes across every human being. But what do we do with it in order to build dreams, in order to build the curiosity, in order to become engaged and involved in a world, as Mark said, to recreate what we really want to see? Thanks, Mark. So what we wanted to do is create a program that went right across from students to educators to families and bridge that gap in a holistic way. What we do know and what we did in our work and our program is that this was an in-classroom program before COVID. And what we've all noticed, and I'm sure all of you on here have noticed in your world of education, that there's a definite line of pre-COVID and post-COVID. COVID threw us a totally different world. It flipped everything up, and it was very, very difficult to navigate and often pivot. I loved what Mark said about being comfortable in the informal. And what happened with COVID, we had to become comfortable in the informal. Children were at home, they were online, they were offline, everything was all over the place. And we noticed that ourselves at Free the Mind Co. During COVID, we were doing more teacher support and parent support than anything else, because the adults didn't have the skills to hold the children. So if the adults didn't have the skills, how were the children going to do this? And then everyone started asking us for our programs, but everyone was online. So we started building out a hybrid model. And I know a lot of people on here, as Caro said to us before, come from spaces where they don't have online access. I'm from South Africa, so we're very familiar with that. And so this can be used in a classroom, and it's very important whatever program you use can have that duality of being online, whether it just be the teacher showing it up and then the class actually becoming involved with it, or if every child has their own tablet or whatever they're working from. So literature, as Mark says, storybooks are so important. So the first program for us goes from K-5 in school, or they can do it at home, and it's self-led. We were very, very conscious of asking teachers, counselors, schools, psychologists, what do you want? And there was no surprise when the teacher said, please give us something light lifting, because they were so overwhelmed, and they still are. The retention rate of educators is 50% right now. And as far as I'm concerned, they're probably the most important people in our societies because they are raising our children with us. So educators, we do a lot for. We do what we call personal development, not simply professional development, where we help them build out their own skills and tools. And we give them a space to express themselves. So they learn while they are actually teaching. And then you have the families, because there has to be a bridge between school and reiterating what the children are doing at school and taking it into the home. And we do that with parents, with caregivers, and we have a specific at-home family program. Thank you, Mark. This is one of the case studies in a school in Atlanta, 1,000 students. It's a tier 1 school. So there are a lot of demographics in this school. And after a year of doing our program, we saw both minor and major behavioral incidences down by 59 and 69%. Now, this wasn't simply just doing our program. This was having a principal who really understood the importance of SEL and the well-being. This is very important to take right through a school culture and build that positivity. They have a room where the children go to have downtime if they're playing out. And what they noticed is that that room was empty most of the time, especially when they were doing the Freddie program. And they realized then the problem was that the teachers were so busy doing discipline that they weren't actually teaching. So it's very important that you have a program running throughout the entire school that everyone knows what is happening. And therefore, everyone colludes together to help the children build their own social emotional language. Thank you, Mark. This then, as to Mark's points before, actually showed in research and therefore showed in what the school was experiencing. Their academics went up, and compared to the state that was going down, was a huge indicator of how important SEL and well-being was, not only for the children, but for the educators in the school. And they became the top school in their district, which you can imagine everyone was super excited about, because this sets the stage for the rest of their lives with executive functioning as well. It also showed resiliency and curiosity in the children, as well as within the school culture. Thank you, Mark. So these were some quotes that we took, and you can see the children holding the Freeing Freddie book. It's the first book of 3 that Brent has written. And this one has got Freddie as the main character and Mr. Cotton, who's a spider. And it is so magical, and it's dynamic, and it makes it fun for the kids. And what we wanted was for the children to see themselves in this literature. One of the most important things that Mark spoke to before as well was language. What we're finding is that children don't have the language to express themselves. So last week I did a webinar for parents of another school, and the principal was saying the children come home and they are out there. They are misbehaving as far as the parents are concerned, and he feels that they're not. They're simply just letting go after being holding so tight all day behind a desk. And that's where this whole confusion comes with a child, where before COVID, they were very used to sitting in desks. Then COVID comes, they're at home, they're able to have their own space, and now they're back at school. And we all thought that children would want to be back at school, and that's not the case. Anxiety in America has gone up so much that 1 in 4 children are clinically diagnosed with an anxiety disorder, which means that they need the skills to hold them through their daily life, whether it be positive or if something's challenging them, they need these skills and tools. So here we have a very interesting point from a principal. We need maximum impact for time and funds invested. So that's their priority. But when you look at a teacher's priority, It's building classroom culture. It's about creating a safe space for the children. And so language is very important, both for educators and children to express themselves. And we're finding that children are doing so through our program, whether you be online or whether you be actually in the classroom face-to-face. Thank you, Mark. So our solutions all start with this magical story. There is an activity sticker book that goes with this and a workbook. So we thought that everyone would just want to be online, but they don't. They want to be holding the book. And it comes in English at this stage, as well as Spanish and in Arabic as well. So those are the 3 languages, and we are building the online program into different languages as well. The storybook really takes the children into a magical space. And if you think back to when you were 8 or 10 years old, if someone had told you when you had those overwhelming feelings that they were normal, and they gave you those specific skills and tools to use at that age, how different might your life have been now? And I can tell you, for me, it would have been hugely different, because I had to learn these skills as I grew into adulthood. And that's why we chose, when we went online, the elementary 5 to 12-year-olds, because they will have these skills for the rest of their lives. And so reading a story, you all remember that one book or that story from when you were little. And we want them to remember this too. It takes them on a journey of curiosity and magic, along with Freddie and all his friends in the magical rainforest. And we are now building our book 2 and book 3 as well. So you have that constant flow within the classroom of a journey. Thank you, Mark. So what is our hybrid model? The students experience online content. Now, as I said, Caro did say there are people without access. So it's very important that it can be used both in the classroom as well as online. So here you have a teacher. She has put it onto a screen, but all the children on the carpet actually just having that discussion. Or there is a facilitator guide that takes it into deeper conversation, whether you be online or offline. And that's very important. We say it's an adapt or adopt model. It can be adapted right across the school in a tier 1, or it can be used alongside other programs. And we do. We have schools who are using different SEL programs, and that's fine, because this fills in the gaps, or it can take right across in the adapt or adopt model. And then within the program, whether it be online or in the classroom, we have these bridges that go home to the families, and it helps the family grow with the child. Thank you. So for me, what's very important is that schools are under so much pressure. And so we created material that can be adopted to different teaching styles as well. We don't want to tell teachers how to teach. They know how to teach, and we have to trust that. We do work with student teachers because they are still going out and finding their way in the classroom. And so they want these extra skills and tools. But teachers, we have teachers who've been working and teaching for 30 years. And so it's very important for us that they use the material in the best way possible to suit their classroom style. And that's what we offer them as well. And this then, for instance, we've got second language children in America as well as other places, whether it be English or Spanish or French. And this allows them to adapt that as well, because a lot of the activities are crafts, it's music, it's skills and tools, for instance, like breathing. It's like visualization. So it teaches them what to do in the moment if they are having challenges, just to take a step back and actually assess what's going on around them, become very self-aware, as well as aware of the other. And what do I need to do to actually regulate in this very moment of time? Thanks, Mark. So we extend learning. The facilitator guides take the children into a deeper conversation, and the teacher is there to assess how deep to take it. So yesterday we had a teacher reaching out who is having bullying issues on the bus, on the school bus. The older kids are bullying the little ones. Now this is a perfect moment for teaching. For teaching the little ones, what do you do if you are being bullied? What skills and tools do you need to use? And on the other side, teaching the older kids empathy, compassion, and positive relationship building. And as Mark spoke earlier, all of this builds to executive functioning so that when you're going into the workplace, I promise you, I've worked a lot in the corporate area as a consultant. There is so much bullying that goes on. And so it's very important that you have the skills and tools to cope, whether you're in a career as an adult or whether you're little. So we want to meet the school-wide needs to help children grow into a society that we are all creating together. So it's a plug and play. As we spoke before, you can start it immediately. There is very, very little training in order to use the actual program. And then we support it with the personal professional development for the teachers, because we really do believe that if you haven't experienced something yourself, it's very difficult to actually teach it. So you can see the illustrations, they really are magical. They were done by an animator illustrator who's done an incredible job. For us, normalizing emotions is very important because, as earlier we heard, is that you can go through so many different emotions through the day. And this positive and negative emotion we don't talk about. We talk about pleasant and unpleasant, comfortable and unpleasant, and uncomfortable. So identifying and releasing fear and anxiety is very important. So we give real skills and tools around that. Communication skills, language is essential in order to have mental health and well-being. And the mind shift to gratitude, compassion, empathy is all where we want to live. We want to live in a society where we not only care about ourselves, but we care about the others, and we build this interconnected space for everyone. We also highlight each individual's importance in the world and how we can all make a difference, no matter how young we are, and what kind of stand and involvement we can do, whether it be looking after the community or in our family or the environment of the trees around us and gardens and the earth under our feet. And then the biggest thing, the saddest thing coming from Africa is when we used to see children with blanked out eyes because they've stopped dreaming. And as a kid, I don't know about all of you, I was told, you're just a dreamer. You're just a dreamer. And it was really a put down, because if you're just a dreamer, what's going to come to reality? What are you going to manifest? And yet it's the first thing. You have to be a dreamer to change the world. You know, like Martin Luther King said, you know, I have a dream, not I have a goal. You know, so we all need to dream, no matter what age. As you get to one dream, start dreaming for the next. And it's essential to teach our children and our educators, dream about a better world, dream about a beautiful world that we can all live in. So to learn more, please scan this on your phone. We would love to hear from you. We are very big in collaboration. We believe that we can only do this together in partnership. So whoever is on here, if you're listening to this, reach out and let's share ideas and collaborate in making this into a beautiful world. So now we open for Q&A to Mark and to myself. Please feel free
Hey, thank you so much for that, Kim. And as people start to generate some questions, if you're in the audience at the moment in the text chat, please drop them in. And maybe Mike, if you or Carolina, if you just scan those, and feel free to come off mute and call them out in a second. Just a couple of comments to make while they do that. Number one, thank you, Kim. I love listening to you also. I love this sense that through this approach to developing social and emotional learning via literature, you're giving young people the permission to feel. And also, I love that end, that permission to dream and to explore joy. That's one of the things that drew me to Free the Mind. The book's gorgeous. Like, you just, as a teacher, you just want to sit there and read that to students because it conjures up emotions, but it's wondrous, it's creative, and it's magical. And learning being at school isn't a race to becoming a grown-up who's employed. It's a unique period of development to wallow in and to enjoy and to have opportunities to experience joy during our days. Emotions, let's be clear, emotions are the gatekeeper. They're the gatekeeper to motivation, why we do what we do. They're the gatekeeper to cognition, how we process the world around us. And they're a gatekeeper to our most limited resource, attention. So emotions matter greatly in our work as educators each and every day. Mike, Carolina, are there any questions currently in the chat or
Mark,
commentary?
I'd really like to address Brucey's comment about his little brother of 9. Brucey, I think this is a very common problem where schools are not moving. They're so stuck in where they are. And it seems like what you're doing is a brilliant job of raising the awareness within your little brother. And he's now in a context that is very difficult for him to cope with. And so perhaps either speaking to the school, I don't know if that would help, but it's very important to show him that you are really seeing and hearing his struggle and together finding a solution, because otherwise he feels like he's being thrown to the wolves on a daily basis. I hope that helps a little.
It does. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Maybe Mark, Kim, could I ask a question? I know one thing that has been mentioned before in our community is if you are a school leader, a school teacher who's trying to introduce cell practices, but sometimes maybe if you're in an area especially that's kind of quite traditional or whatever, you get a little bit of pushback. This isn't what we did in my day, etc., etc. Maybe from staff, maybe from parents, maybe from wider community. Mark, you touched a lot about some of the evidence there, but do you have any tips on how best to handle that conversation and any ways in which you would tailor it depending on the type of feedback you were getting? Because I think I know certainly in our community we have come across people who are wanting to integrate cell more, but sort of sometimes just find it hard in practice.
Yeah, that's a great question, Mike. I mean, I get a chance to work globally. And one thing that I guess learned in this space is you basically need to be socially aware yourself, and you need to read your audience, because the driver to engage varies greatly across country, across communities, across states. So for some people, the agenda is around, let's talk about academic outcomes. Some it's around, let's talk about reducing antisocial behavior. For some, it's around, let's talk about creating more civic-minded students. So it varies a lot. I think the risk with social and emotional learning is when people are messaging it as this is just a nice to have and we'll all get along well with one another, this will be lovely. Because teachers are busy, schools are busy, resources are tight. That's why I said at the start, we need to shift from telling to compelling. And to shift from telling people what we're going to do or why we should do something to make it compelling for them is to match the evidence against what they want and what they see as important. So if the community views that integration of multi-faith communities is critical for our community, then that's the driver for a social and emotional learning approach. Or if the community is concerned about employability and maintain, then that's the driver. So that would be, I guess, my answer. Obviously, I started with the evidence base on purpose because I would recommend everybody always, especially school leaders, go to the evidence. It shifts it from telling to compelling.
And to add to that, Mike, there are a lot of schools who are just wanting to check off the box. Look, we've got SEL, you know, and they just want to check off the box. And this is where we're finding that there's this whole new movement that a lot of principals are struggling with. And so it's going to be time that actually takes over to show the proof. That's why we showed you the one school with the evidence where you had the behavior settling down and the academics going up. And when people start seeing proof of what that is, then they start adopting it. I want to just talk to Jan's point about dreams. Jan, I so agree with you. There are so many adults who are walking around like that too, where they just, it's almost like they're too afraid to dream because it's also scary. Because what we've said is that you have to be successful. What does success look like? And so people are not dreaming or reaching opportunities or potential because of fear, because of anxiety. We see it so often at all times, at all ages. And I think that really needs to be addressed. So I'm so pleased that you actually put that in there. And I look forward to speaking to you. I know we were in the group last week, and so I look forward to sharing with you and having this conversation.
Excellent. Cara, do we have any more questions, Cara?
No, I don't think so. So we can wrap this up. I would like to invite everyone for our upcoming events. We have one next week on environmental education, so you're welcome to join. And I guess that's it. Mark, Kim, please do share the resources and everything you showed us today so we can share it with our community. And please feel free to contact Mark and Kim if you have any further questions or would like to keep the conversation going. So I think that's it for us. I hope everyone enjoyed our session and hope you guys, everyone, has a great day. Thank you for
Thank you
listening.
so much,
Right.
Mark and Kim. What a great session
Thanks.
to have you all.
Thanks, everyone.
Have a great day.
Bye.
Everyone.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye, Jan. Thank you.
Jan.
Thank you.